Showtime.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show. I'm Rosie DeSanctis with Bill Miller here. We have such a fun show for you tonight.
We absolutely do, partner. In fact, our guest tonight started his career on Broadway, and since that time has become one of the all-time great voice actors in the business. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the one, the only, Charlie Adler. Charlie, welcome to the show.
I thought you were talking about somebody else.
Steel clap, yay!
Who's going to come into my house?
Charlie, I have to tell you, it's been so much fun. Like, before we even turn the cameras on, talking to you, you're just such a hoot, and we're really happy to have you on the show.
We had such a great conversation, a pre-interview the other day. I was drinking tequila on my deck, talking to you guys. We talked for like an hour or something.
We did. We should have had it recording then.
Yeah.
That would have been just as fun. But, you know, I don't think a lot of people in this country realize if they have seen animated films, if they've seen cartoons, they're probably already familiar with you. They've heard your voice. You've done hundreds of characters, probably, maybe even 1,000. I don't know, Charlie. It's a lot.
I quit counting.
Exactly. I understand why. We looked at your Wikipedia page, and we just had to keep scrolling and scrolling. But before we talk about what you're doing currently, everyone gets their start somewhere, and you did really interesting things before you even got into the entertainment business. Talk to us about that.
Well, oh, geez. Well, I had a couple of stopgaps, but yeah, I mean, some of the highlights of my wonderful peppered life. I was a janitor at a church in Nyack, New York, and that was after I had worked for a while as an actor. I just dropped out and lived on a houseboat in Nyack, New York, where my sister lived. Still lives. And I baked bread and quiche for a whorehouse in New York. When I couldn't afford my heat. And so I only knew how to make two things. I had my friend Linda, who's a brilliant oncologist in Tucson, I just saw a month ago. We've been friends since high school. She taught me two things to bake and cook. And so that heated my Hell's Kitchen apartment, which was freezing. And so there's a knock on my door one day, some very trolly kind of gal is at the door. And she said, "What are you baking?" I invited her in. And it turned out she ran a house of ill repute, I should say. Okay. And so she asked me if she brought me the black African hashish, if I would bake it in the bread and the quiche, so that the girls could serve the guys and so get them high and they'd spend more money. And so that's what I did. And this was pre-AIDS or anything. It was just, venereal disease, which was bad enough, but it didn't kill you. And so I would sign in tin foil. I'd make these little notes and say, "Girls, did you get your checkups? Love, Mom." And then this goes on about a year. I made like $5 a bread or something. And then ding dong, buzz. And I was on the ground floor of this terrible apartment building. And I opened my door and I leaned out to see the little holding tank. And these girls are screaming and yelling, "Mom, Mom!" And so I let them in. And I had these amazingly wonderful, brilliant, terrific women who made me get dressed, threw me in the back of a stretch limo, and they took me out on a night in New York, which I shall never forget. Every club there was, windows to the world in the World Trade Center. And they were smart, well-educated, funny, interesting people. And it really changed my view. So that was one of my lovely earlier jobs, and slicing onions in a Chinese restaurant and making rice and locking myself in the refrigerator, things that were very good.
It all builds character.
Build something.
Absolutely. And now, Charlie, I mentioned in our introduction that you started in Broadway, and you just gave us some additional background on some of those other jobs that you have. But I'm wondering, as a kid, were you one of those kids that was just kind of goofing off, making noise, doing sound effects, impersonations, things like that? Or did your love for being behind the microphone and becoming a voice actor, did that come later in life? Was there a particular event or role or something that really triggered that?
It's a great question because, yes, it came way later. I was a weird kid. I belonged to nothing, no group. I was an artist. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to paint. I wanted to sculpt. I was very smart and very little and took a lot of crap, was bullied a lot. And my mother was a teacher. And she really instilled this great idea that everything was possible. And in 5th grade, the school that my mother taught at, I had the most wonderful teacher who I heard just died, and I loved him. His name was Bob Merkel. He was my 5th grade teacher. And he wanted to do a play about the solar system. This gets better, I swear. And he cast me as the sun. I mean, my first lead role. And by the way, I shook the whole time, but I loved it. And I felt I belonged someplace. And as time went on, I started to take classes. So, Bill, I was a very disciplined kid. I had my acting teacher just died 2 years ago, Flo. She was 93 when she died. She called me her 4th son. I would see her whenever I was in New York once I moved out to LA. And she took all of us kids to the theater in New York for matinees in a summer program. So we saw every summer 8 matinees of whatever was on Broadway or off Broadway for 4 years. So I saw 32 of some of the most remarkable plays, musicals, experimental stuff, Shakespeare, everything. And it was such an inspiration to me. And weirdly, I ended up directing many of the people that were icons for me as a kid, and then becoming friends with them just because life is so strange in show business. So, yeah, I was very disciplined, and I knew I stopped being smart in high school because I wanted to get the hell out. I felt like I was in a prison in school. And then I got rebellious and I was doing stupid things. And I got my first play job when I was 15, acting. And then I apprenticed at a local theater, which had all the tours of all the great shows. Every week would come in summer stock, huge stars. But when I was 18, I got my actor's equity card, and I was in play after play after play after play after play. I was so lucky. I did not do my first animated voice until I was already working in theater. I think I was on Broadway, and I got a call to audition for Spike the Baby Dragon in the original My Little Pony. For some reason, they were casting it in New York because Sandy Duncan and Tony Randall were starring in it. And so I auditioned and I got it. I did not know crap from Christmas. I didn't know what end to put the microphone on. And I just did it. And I did it. And it was a success. And when I was touring with the show that I had done on Broadway, I happened to be in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Staying at the Barclay Hotel, loving that city. And because it was in Philadelphia, they were doing My Little Pony Part 2, got on a train on my dark day, did Part 2, moved to LA. I don't want to take all this time with agent stories, but ended up with an agent who, after about maybe 3 years with that agent, they were producing My Little Pony, the series. And so I got that. And by then I had already gotten Smurfs, which was my first show in LA. But my first job in voiceover, not radio, because I've done a lot of radio commercials, just, as me as some smart ass kid. But it just, for all of you out there, a career is a career. A career should look like a bad EKG. It is just, nothing's linear.
Well, there's two questions I have. One, you mentioned the agents in LA. You kind of glossed over that because you thought I was going to let you get away with not telling this story. When you auditioned for Abrams Artists, you wanted to audition for their voiceover department.
Right.
What happened with that? Tell that story, Charlie.
Well, I was very successful in on-camera commercials. I had done a ton. And if you want to have a great laugh, just go to YouTube and put Charlie Adler commercial reel.
Okay.
and see what I was at 19. I think the oldest I was in any of those commercials was 22 or 3. No, 24.
You're in luck. It's the last 48D we had in stock. Because I'm that part of every person that says, we really need a new one of those, or let's eat out tonight.
That's it.
I'll do the dishes.
The G-Pot Scrubber 3 cleans dishes and pots so well, everybody wants to do
So
the dishes.
I had a reel, and I was a commodity. So they were very willing to sign me in on camera commercials. But in New York during the 70s and 80s, there was no distinction. You were an actor. You had an agent. And it was a matter of course. I could go sing in a nightclub after work, after doing 8 shows a week. I could do a commercial during the day. I could do a radio commercial. It didn't matter. I was just an actor. Nobody made those separations. So come out to LA. I go to get an agent. They said, well, you go to see a commercial agent. You go to see a film and TV agent. You got to do a voice agent. So I go to the commercial one. And I said, at the end of the interview, he said, we want to sign you. Great. So well, when can I, what about voiceover? Oh. Very separate department. I thought, what was Rod Serling? I mean, it was like I stepped in something. And I said, well, thanks anyway. And I got up. He said, no. Let me talk to them. And he leaves the office. He comes back. He's white as a ghost. And he says, they'll meet you. Like he had been put through hell. So I go down and meet these 2 terrible women, both of whom are dear friends to this day, but they were terrible. I can't say what I called them, which I still do to make them laugh. And they were, yeah. But I had done this hit show in New York and on the tour. And so one of them was kind of excited by that. So she said, well, come back next week and just give us a 5-minute audition. And I didn't know what that even meant, but I had big on literacy, worked teaching remedial reading, huge improv background, loved to read children's books out loud to kids, volunteered doing it in New York. So I just pulled out children's books, thought about some of the characters that I did that I'm kind of nuts about, put together what I thought was 5 minutes, went there, but I was so nervous and so uncomfortable and so embarrassed by the idea of it. I don't know what it was. And I had a pith helmet that I wore in New York because I was so shy that when a show would be over, I always said to the hookers that I baked for that I could get in and out of my clothes faster than they could, because my goal was to get the hell out of the theater so I didn't have to meet anybody. I got the hand. It felt wonderful. Gone. Don't talk to me. I was so nervous. And I always had this pith helmet. Clever, right? So I'm wearing this pith helmet and I do this audition. And I asked them, can I turn my back so they don't look at me? Who the hell would want to sign that freak, right? I mean, really, I'm really helping myself there, right?
Well, it is a voiceover venue, so.
Yeah, it's true. But what a moron. What a maroon. So I did it and they signed me. Then and there they signed me. And I was up in San Francisco a week later shooting a Beck's Beer commercial. I had auditioned for Hanna-Barbera doing the exact same thing. They got me in a general audition. I go up to San Francisco, I shoot a Beck's Beer commercial. I get to the airport, I check my, yes, ladies and gentlemen, answering service. And a pager and a phone that dialed and took quarters. And they said, you got Smurfs. Say, what? And that was the beginning of this trajectory that I had never entertained, never looked to do, never thought about, but man, oh man. And I gotta tell you, flash forward this horrible time that we're going through, everybody I know is suffering financially and working. What we are doing in animation is still working. I am working, and I am alternately ashamed because and guilty, and thrilled and grateful. It's crazy, but I'm working.
Well, someone has to subsidize Bill and I, so don't feel bad about it.
Do you know how many people I'm subsidizing now? I love that you said that. The money comes in, I pay out what I need, and the rest is going out to my family and friends, and I couldn't be happier. I'm so grateful.
It will come back multiplied. So I wanted to piggyback on that, Bill, and then I'll let you get in a question. But because you were trained on stage, okay, there's a lot of preparation that goes into building a character.
Right.
My question to you is this. Well, it's kind of two-part. One, is there a big difference between how you prepare a character for voice acting as opposed to on stage or on camera? And the second part of that is, when you book a role, does the voice come first, or does the animation come first?
Well, I'm probably an idiot when I say this. I've never thought about anything I do. I would watch all those actor studio interviews, and I'd go, "Shut up! Stop talking about what you do," because it's so for me immediate. I don't think about anything. I only feel my way through stuff, and I don't know how to think about it because it's too much for me. I just go. And so in terms of animation, so for me, there's not a lot of thought, because thought to me interferes with being creative. I think if you're thinking, you're not feeling. And this is a feeling medium. Thinking is for people who use their brains at a different capacity. So that's not what I do. But having said that, there are things to be thought and considered when you're doing a play or you're doing a long arc of something. But animation's immediate, it's improvisational, and I never think about the characters as a voice, ever. They're people, they're beings. I don't care if I'm playing a toilet. It's a being that has an emotional life. So for me, it has to amuse me, which is terribly selfish. But I gotta be having a good time. If I'm not amused, it ain't happening. And I stink on ice. And I have fought tooth and nail for that privilege with people who have other ideas in control, or they think they're in control of what I should be doing. But you can't rob joy from a creative event. And to me, it's a creative event. They give you pictures, they give you a script, and I get it or I don't get it. And then they construct a radio play from the recordings, and that gets sent to storyboard artists who do panels that construct a storyboard, and then that goes to the animators, who then draw to what we do. It's a great collaboration. It certainly does not end with us. It begins with the writing, like everything does, and then it goes to us, and then it gets handed off. And then there's music, and there's sound effects. There's Foley artists who come in and make the clippity clop of the horses and a head getting smacked. There's all these wonderful artists that congeal. Is that a word?
It's amazing all that goes into it, and I really appreciate the way that you just described it. And one of the things that we were hoping to do, Charlie, and this kind of goes back to something Rosie said a while back in terms of that list of the characters you voiced being a mile long, to where you got carpal tunnel scrolling through Wikipedia, through all of them. And then if you clicked on a link, there'd be another link with all these other voices that you did as well.
I've never gone on it. I don't even.
Yeah, you've done a lot. So here's what we were hoping we could do, just to have a little bit of fun, because there was one particular animated series that you were heavily involved in, very popular, Cow and Chicken. And we were wondering if we could maybe ask a question. Well, I know Rosie has a question for Cal.
I have a question for Cal.
And I have a question for someone else.
Okay.
But I'll let Rosie go
for it.
Okay.
If it stinks on us, it stinks on us.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Cal,
Yeah.
if you could be anyone in the world for a day,
Yes.
who would it be?
Oh, well, I think I would be Jane Goodall because I love monkeys. I could pet them and hold them and squeeze them and love them. I would be a doctor, Dr. Jane Goodall.
Oh, thank you, Cal. I love talking to you.
I love your hair. Do you use mayonnaise?
Yes, I do.
Can't even remember what my question. Oh wait, yeah, I do. Yeah. So my question, Charlie, is for Red Guy.
Ooh.
What I'm wondering is, Red Guy, could you tell us something about Charlie that no one else knows?
Well, one of the things that I can tell you about Charlie is that no one knows is that I am him. I hold the key. Oh, that hurts so good.
Oh, you are so wonderfully off. I love it. No, you're fabulous. Gosh, that's
I love wonderfully off. That suits me.
I love that.
And you know, Charlie, I got to throw one other question in there. Now, this one is from me, and this is to you, okay? Because I'm noticing you've got short sleeves on, and I'm seeing these huge pipes there in the sleeves. So, what do you do to stay in such great shape?
I work out. I mean, I've been working out since, honestly, I started working out when I was 19 because I understood a couple of things. I understood that I could not be defined by kids in school in the gym when I was a skinny little kid. It's something I always wanted to do, and I loved to play soccer. I was great at soccer. But I was curious about it, one. And two is I also understood that once I started to get into it, I started to feel so good. I mean, really good all the time. And it really applied to breath control, to doing 8 shows a week, to what I ate. I was so disciplined. You know, a lot of my friends were really messing around with stupid stuff, not me. I was very disciplined. And I still work out a lot because, and I have a gym in my house, which I'm very lucky. If I had to go somewhere, I would be Jackie Gleason. I'd be the size of Jackie Gleason. I just wouldn't, I can't be bothered. And I sing in my gym, which works on my voice and my breath control and all that. I just want to be alone. And I consider that my most, it sounds so ridiculous to say these words. Let's say sacred. That's not right. It's the one place that I have utter privacy and autonomy. I can only interact with me and 3 dogs who come into the gym and hang out and coach me every now and again.
Wow.
Question for you in regards to, we've talked before about how sometimes art touches people in ways that we really can't know until someone comes up to us and shares a story. And I don't know, are you willing to share the story that you shared the other night when we were talking? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because basically, you don't believe it from this, but basically I'm very shy and I'm very hermetic when I can be, when I'm allowed to be. I live in the woods. I'm really out in the mountains in the woods, which I consider a public service. My neighbors do. And, I would throw a Christmas party for my agents every year at my house. And I have a bar, not that I ever use it. And a girl that I spoke to every day, who I hadn't met for a year, every day, who gave me my schedule, who whatever. Doll. She's standing at my bar and I'm shaking martinis and I hand her her martini and she starts to cry. And I thought, what the hell have I done? And I'm so paranoid about that. Because automatically I go, what have I done? What have I done? And I said, Marielle, are you all right? What's the matter? She said, every day I would come home from school. And she tells a story that her parents were divorced. Her father had been dying, was very ill. She was a latchkey kid. And every day she came home and what salvaged her soul, in her words, not mine, was Tiny Toons. And she said, I can't believe I'm in Buster Bunny's house. And it was partially surreal. And then it was something that woke me up to the fact that, you know, I'm at a microphone, I'm doing my job, and it's a job. I call it work. I'm going to work, and I come home from work, and I leave it behind. I don't think about it. And here's somebody who 25 years later, or maybe 20 years later, I don't know, is telling me it touched her. And it was the first time I thought about it. You know, in the theater, you get an immediate, you know, then and there that it's touched somebody, then and there, or it hasn't, but you know that it's real time, done. This was a whole other event. And I started to really consider that I wasn't working in a vacuum, that it meant something to somebody. And that meant a lot to me because I had the best teachers. I had people that inspired me. I had people who took the time to talk to me. I had moments that changed me. And sometimes I got to thank the people and sometimes I didn't, more so now. You know, it's weird. I really did swoon a lot when people walked in and I was directing them or acting with them. And I would get to say, as a colleague, I got to tell you something. When I was a kid, you came on this tacky school bus on a hot summer day because our teacher wrote a note to you, and you took the time and you talked to us, and you had another show to do. You took that time. So it's all, it's all these events sort of conspire to make a life, but I never thought of myself as any part of that, because I don't think of myself that way. And I started to think of myself that it does make a difference. And I'm an old person, and I like the idea of teaching. And it's important for me to let myself feel that. It's very selfish when you deny people the right to say thank you.
Oh, that's a great perspective. What do you think Buster Bunny might say to her to comfort her?
Oh, Toots, I love you. Rub it in, Mario. Have another martini, Toots.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We loved what you did on Dream of Denver's book.
Yeah.
Bears in a Box.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed it.
And it seems that, it was so organic for you.
Yeah, it was, because I knew what the hell I was doing. And, typical, here, turn on your phone, which is like, I don't know how to work my toaster. You hit the thing and start doing it. And I'm like, and I enjoyed the book so much that whatever. I mean, it wasn't my greatest hits, but the message was important. The book was important. The story was important. The kids and imagination, kids being isolated, especially now, was important. And here's something else. Read. I mean, reading is everything. And I'm going to get this message across, and I hope you keep this, because I got to tell you something. The one thing that drives me nuts is that if kids don't have access, we have a thing called public schools. If kids by demographics, by location, by lack of funds, can't eat, can't get supplies, and now in this isolated state are forced to go to school and use these boxes, this internet, and they don't have that, they are being completely and utterly neglected. And more than anything, and now especially, this is where our resources, in my opinion, have to go. How are kids who are not learning what they need to learn to be whole and to become, to be possible, where are they getting it? If they can't even go to school and they can't even afford lunch to go to school, who's taking care of these kids? And you can say you've got to read, but if the kids don't have the tools to read, where are they going to read?
Yeah, that's really important.
More people need to be mindful. And as many people who are in positions to be useful and mindful, that's where it's important. Enough people suffer and have this awareness of their own suffering. Enough people can feel things, but it's when you are in a position to take that mindfulness and push it forward into usefulness and action, that's where all of that lives to me. So, it's one thing to go when people go, oh, and then do nothing. That has to be translated into an action, I hope. Okay, the sermon's over.
I like to end a lot of our shows by asking our audience to make a difference for somebody every day. And you clearly have made a difference for God knows how many, on so many days, for so many years. So thank you, Charlie, so much for joining us tonight on the show. I really do appreciate it. I know my partner in crime does as well. And I think everybody watching this show will appreciate it. So folks, I'm going to say it to you, as Charlie has done for years, make a difference for someone every day and make every day a great day.
Bye, folks. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Really, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Charlie.
You guys, Optimus Prime placed me in charge of this team. Okay, if we're so much better, why don't we run things here?
Only to help spawn our new army, the Fallen, and decrease it. After all, in your absence, someone had to take command. Not to call you a coward, Master.